Hello, and welcome to Kieran Ford's virtual placement culmination presentation for the 2020 spring-summer term. Throughout this presentation, I will speak about the 4 professional fields of work I interviewed and answer general questions showcasing what I thought about each of these professional fields of work. After that, I will give an overall takeaway about this placement experience. The first field I will be speaking about today is clinical and allied health. In this professional field, I spoke to Dr. Paul Sly, who is a licensed chiropractor and acupuncturist. The first question I asked myself is, how did the responses make me feel? I feel the responses Dr. Sly gave me were really informative and detailed. The more he spoke about his job, the more I felt that choosing a career in allied and clinical health is the right field for me. Were the answers what I expected? I would say most of the answers were roughly what I expected to hear. Hearing Dr. Sly say things such as a lot of kinesiology and life sciences students are the typical people that pursue chiropractics was not overly surprising, as well as hearing that typical working environment is out of a private clinic was also something that I was expecting to hear. Has this interview assisted me in choosing a career path? After speaking with Dr. Sly about his profession as a chiropractor, I feel like it has confirmed my choice to pursue a career in the medical field. As a doctor of chiropractics, he obviously specializes in musculoskeletal injuries, which really interests me. He also spoke a bit about responding to emergency calls. Hearing what he does with regards to emergency calls really interests me quite a bit because I have been considering going into paramedicine for quite a while, where all medical care provided is in an emergency-based situation. Also hearing about the variety of musculoskeletal injuries he treats on a daily basis and how he goes about treating them was also very intriguing. The care required for these injuries is typically quite hands-on work, which is something I would enjoy as opposed to prescribing medications and letting those do all the work. What surprised me? What was something I had never heard before? One thing that I was not expecting to hear him speak about was emergency work. I thought that as a chiropractor, all your work would be scheduled appointments only. However, on top of regular appointments, Dr. Sly told me that he can get phone calls late in the evening or even on weekends with referrals from the local hospital to see him about their injuries, as he has specialized in certain areas more so than a regular medical doctor would be. Dr. Sly also told me that on the odd occasion, he would be called into the hospital to help diagnose musculoskeletal injuries with the medical doctors there and explain the best way to treat that injury. To me, this was all unexpected roles within the scope of practice of a chiropractor. What skills or education is needed for this profession? I would be required to go to chiropractic college either in Canada or the USA to receive my Doctor of Chiropractic degree, and would then be required to get licensed by the Provincial Chiropractic College. In Canada, there are only 2 universities that offer a Doctor of Chiropractic degree, the Canadian Memorial Chiropractic College in Toronto and the University of Quebec in Trois-Rivières. However, there are many more choices in the USA. One professional competency that Dr. Sly told me was crucial to this profession is communication. Typically, you will be working with other medical professionals to help treat a client's injury, so being able to explain to both the client and the other medical professionals what you are doing is very important so they know what has been done and how they can help improve care for that injury. My biggest takeaway from this is that although this job really does interest me, I would still require another 4 years of expensive schooling. However, with this education and degree, I would be able to practice a specialized type of medicine and would have lots of opportunities for hands-on work and professional development, which is something I really want in my future profession, regardless of what job it is. As I stated earlier, after speaking to Dr. Sly about his profession, it has confirmed my choice to pursue a career in the allied or clinical health fields. The second field I am interested in is physical and health education, where I spoke to Suzanne Stackpole, who is a high school teacher in the physical and health education department. I feel the responses Suzanne gave me really made me reconsider my choice about not doing a Con Ed degree. As she got more into detail about her profession, I started feeling like being a phys ed teacher could have been the right career choice for me, as I really enjoy doing a variety of sports and workouts, as well as being able to instruct them. As a phys ed teacher, Suzanne spends a lot of her free time being a coach for many of the sports teams at her school. Having coached and taught sports a couple of times myself, I feel like being a phys ed teacher at a high school could be a great career choice for me in the future. Were the answers what I expected? I found that there were quite a few answers that were surprising to me. I have a general knowledge of what a phys ed teacher is and what they do, but things such as the route that led Suzanne to the career she is currently in now was a huge surprise to me, as it was not a conventional way of entering this career. Has this assisted me in choosing a career path? Prior to going into this interview, I felt that working in the physical and health education field would not have been too interesting to me, so I ranked it as my third choice on my categories of people I wanted to interview. After this interview, I feel I've bumped up to my second choice. Although I am not in Con Ed, I feel that should I ever decide to leave the clinical and allied health field of work, I think working as a phys ed teacher would definitely suit me well, especially as I enjoy instructing many different sports. What surprised me? What was something I had never heard? Something that surprised me was how phys ed classes have changed even since I left high school 4 years ago. There is now Olympic weightlifting courses as well as CrossFit as part of the regular curriculum. Both of these are taught for professional development, which I think is pretty interesting because when I was in high school, the only physical activity classes were gym, personal fitness, and outdoor ed. Being able to expand the curriculum of what a physical and health education teacher can teach, providing that they are qualified, I think is great without the need to go back to teachers' college. Offering these as professional development is certainly something I would be interested in doing if I were to pursue this as a career. What skills or education is needed for this profession? If I was to become a physical and health education teacher, I would be required to go to teachers' college and receive my bachelor's of education degree, which would take 2 years. Following this, I would most likely be put onto a supply list with a school board, and then depending on performance and teaching abilities, I could then be offered a position at a specific school full-time. So in total, I think it would take around 4 years to get into a full-time teaching position. One professional competency that Suzanne said was important for this profession is being able to connect with students. When in a classroom setting, she said it is important to make the content that you are teaching fun to engage the students. If it is boring, they simply won't pay attention. You also need to be able to connect with students one-on-one quite well because there will always be students who will struggle in your class. Being able to connect with them and gain their trust will allow you to help give them guidance to improve their abilities, which is very important. I think my biggest takeaway from this interview is that there is a lot more to the job as a phys ed teacher than I originally thought there was. With many different opportunities for professional development, you will never be stuck teaching the same thing. I also think it is a great profession as there is always demand for teachers somewhere in Canada or around the world, and teaching physical and health education is quite important because it teaches kids fundamental motor skills that they will need throughout their lives. The third field I am interested in is health promotion. In this field, I spoke to Deanne Evans, who is an occupational therapist. How did the responses make me feel? The responses to all my questions were all very interesting to me as I did not have much knowledge of this profession. Learning about what occupational therapy is and what occupational therapists do, I thought was really interesting. Were the answers what I expected? Going into this interview with Deanne, I did not know what to expect for answers, so a lot of the information was a surprise to me. I feel that this is because I did not have much knowledge about this profession prior to the interview, but now I feel I know a lot more about it. Has this assisted me in choosing a career path? I feel that this interview did not have as much of an impact on narrowing down my choices of career paths I would be interested in. I got a lot of great information about this profession which I did not know a lot about before. After speaking with Deanne, I now feel like this has given me insight into a profession I may have never considered beforehand. Although it is a health-related profession, I still feel I would be more interested in working in a clinical environment. What surprised me? What was something I had never heard? A lot surprised me about this profession. I think one of the main things that surprised me about this profession was the fact that Deanne works primarily with children. Given the title occupational therapist, I assumed that most of the job would be based around working age people and helping them recover from injury to get back into the workplace. This assumption was wrong, however, as there are 3 main categories you could work in: children therapy, workplace therapy, and retirement therapy. Although you could work as a general occupational therapist and work with all 3 of these categories, Having the ability to specialize and work with a certain category is certainly quite interesting, as each category could pose its own challenges. What skills and education is needed for this profession? I would be required to go back to university to obtain a master's degree in occupational therapy. During this degree, I would receive some valuable experience through placements that would allow me to see the different fields of practice within occupational therapy to help me decide if I would like to specialize in with a certain occupational category. Two skills that are a must in this profession are conflict resolution and empathy. Conflict resolution is important within this profession because there are clients that occupational therapists work with who do not want to help and don't want to be treated. Being able to prove your point as to why they need help and show them how your help could benefit them and allow them to become more independent is really important. Building a middle ground with these clients can allow them to receive some help while allowing them to do things their way. Empathy is also an important skill in this profession, as you need to learn how to understand how your client is feeling by putting yourself in their shoes. Being able to build this connection with them can make all the difference between a client wanting to work with you or not. Coming off my interview with Deanne, I feel that a whole other world of opportunities has been opened up to me. Working in the health promotion field was not something I had ever considered doing before. However, with the information I learned in this interview, I feel that a profession at health promotion, such as being an occupational therapist, would be a career I would really enjoy. The only thing is that I would still be required to go get further education. If I were to go back to school, I'd probably do further education in order to work in a profession that is in a clinical environment, as that is where I feel I would like to work the most. The final professional field I'll be showcasing is sport management. For this category, I spoke to Chaim Conklin, who is the head of basketball operations for the Nipissing Lakers men's basketball team. How did the responses make me feel? The responses to my questions made it seem like there was not a lot to this profession. What I mean by that is that it seems like there is not a lot of responsibilities within this profession, and that you could enter into this profession with little to no management experience. I personally want to work in a workplace that is filled with professional staff who are all qualified to carry out their specific jobs. When I asked for further details about the answers to some of the questions, James struggled to find examples to back his explanations, which made it seem like there was not much difficulty within this job. However, I feel that there is probably some behind the scene work that I did not hear about that could be quite difficult. Were the answers what I expected? I would say that the answers were not quite what I expected to hear. There was a lot more critical analysis within this position rather than managing a team. Given the title of this position, I expected to hear a lot more about getting all the necessities for road trips in order, such as transportation, accommodation, meals, and coordinating with the league and other managers from other teams to make schedules. Instead, I found that there was a lot more critical analysis within this profession because a lot of the role consisted of going through video footage of games and practices to determine what needs to be worked on by the team and seeing what other teams' strengths and weaknesses are before going into the next game so the coach can prepare the athletes for what they could expect to see. Has this assisted me in choosing a career path? After interviewing Chaim, I think that it has helped me narrow down my choices, knocking sport management off the list of potential fields I am interested in working in. I found that there was not a lot of options for professional development within this field, therefore making me feel that I would become bored quite quickly. There also is not a lot of hands-on or practical work within this field. Instead, a lot of the work consists of sitting behind a computer, which is something I do not particularly enjoy and do not want to be doing frequently when I'm starting my career, as I want to do something fun and exciting. What surprised me? What was something I had never heard? Something that surprised me is the amount of time spent reviewing video footage of your team and other teams to see what your team can improve on, see what other team strategies are, and how to attack against their techniques. As I stated in the previous question, I thought there was going to be a lot more leadership aspects in this position. However, most of this profession consists of a lot of late nights strategizing for your team. What skills or education is needed for this profession? There are no specific certifications or education that is required for this profession. However, I feel a degree in business or management would be beneficial. The only thing I would really lack is knowledge of basketball, as a lot of this job is about strategizing. However, I'm sure I would be successful in this position for a different sport such as hockey and soccer, where I have a good knowledge of the sport. When it comes to skill requirements, one of the biggest skills required in this profession is communication. Although communicating with the league and other teams is required, communication is one of the most important aspects when relaying information to the coaching staff with regards to fixing a mistake from happening in the future or explaining how an opposing team defends to help train your players to be able to get around their defense in the game. I think the biggest takeaway I got from interviewing Chaim as the head of basketball operations is that this is not a career path for me. There are very few options for professional development, and without that, I feel I would get bored quickly within this profession. I am also not a fan of not being in a hands-on type of job. This profession is very computer-based, where I would likely be sat down working most of the day, as opposed to being in a dynamic working environment that I would much more enjoy. After speaking to all these professionals and learning more about their fields of work, I feel that I am most interested in going into the clinical and allied health profession. After doing these 4 interviews, I know that I certainly would not enjoy working in the sport management field. After learning a lot about the occupational therapy profession, it definitely piqued my interest as I did not know much about this profession beforehand. Learning about the scope of care they provide and to whom they provide it I thought was very interesting, and it is definitely a career that I will consider in the future should I ever decide to leave an allied and health profession. And finally, there's physical and health education. This too is a career I will consider in the future as I do enjoy teaching different sports and being active. But for now, I will stick to an exciting career in the Army, hopefully in a clinical and allied health profession as a medic. Thank you for listening.